in and out before 6 a.m. to complete their mission. So they assembled at their designated assembly area at 2 a.m. And of the nearly 600 paratroopers that were supposed to be there for the operation, only 100 had shown up. So they were at 1/6 strength. The commanding officer then made the decision to wait 15 more minutes, and in those 15 minutes, an additional 50 paratroopers were able to make it to the assembly area. And at that point, he made the decision to go ahead with the assault. And so out of the, basically with 25% strength, he was supposed to have close to 600 troopers. He only had 150. They were missing most of their heavy equipment, mortars, anti-tank weapons, heavy explosives. None of that was available to them. So with really only small arms, the 150 paratroopers of the British 6th Airborne assaulted the Maryville Battery. They were able to capture it after heavy fighting. They had to traverse barbed wire, trenches, minefields. It's definitely a well dug in and heavily fortified position, defended against exactly the type of attack that the Allies were organizing. But they were able to capture that position and temporarily silence some of the guns. They then evacuated, as they had to, before 6 a.m., and they did signal by radio that they had completed their objective. Later on, German forces reoccupied that position, and they were able to get a few of the guns back into operation, but not all of them. So that's the Maryville Battery, one of the very famous objectives for the British airborne troops on D-Day. Their other objective, or another very famous one anyways, is marked on number 2 on your map. There are 2 bridges here that, you can't really see it from this zoom angle, but you see there's 2 rivers and canals here. This is the Caen Canal and the Orne River in Normandy. And there are 2 bridges that cross these rivers. And most bridges, the Allies wanted destroyed. The reason being they wanted to destroy that infrastructure and make it more difficult for the German defenders to bring up reinforcements, tanks and troops. They wanted to blow up bridges and make it a lot harder for them to cross those rivers and bring up reinforcements. But they did purposely want to keep a few bridges intact for their own use later. And specifically, these 2 were chosen. And so British 6th Airborne, using gliders, Horsa gliders, towed by C-47s, landed behind enemy lines here in Normandy, and they captured successfully both of these bridges. And they were subsequently renamed. It wasn't known by this at the time, but they were subsequently renamed Pegasus Bridge because the unit insignia of the British 6th Airborne features a Pegasus. So in honor of the 6th Airborne, that bridge has now been renamed Pegasus Bridge. And their radio signal back to Allied headquarters to indicate that they had successfully captured both bridges was ham and jam. Ham meaning one bridge, jam meaning the other bridge. And if they captured both bridges successfully, they would then transfer back to Allied HQ. Ham and jam was the code word. And within about 15 minutes of landing by glider, the British 6th Airborne had successfully captured both of those bridges intact. They were actually worried that the bridges had been wired with explosive, and so they had sappers, trained combat engineers, landed with the gliders, and their job was to actually go underneath the bridge, sort of like hold their hands and sort of rappel underneath the bridge, and if there were any explosives there, to disarm those explosives. In the movie The Longest Day, there's a very dramatic scene showing the attack on Pegasus Bridge, where they have those combat engineers going hand over hand underneath the bridge, finding explosives and then tossing them into the river. That's actually fictional. That didn't happen that way in real life. It turns out that there were explosives on the site, but they were not fired to the bridge themselves. So it was not necessary to actually disarm explosives. The British 6th Airborne, their job then was to hold those bridges intact until basically noon the next day, when reinforcements had landed on Sword Beach, part of the landing forces from the beaches could move inland several miles and reinforce them. That then brings us to number 3 on our map. This is Sword Beach. This was one of the 2 British invasion beaches. Again, primarily British. We were all, of course, fighters from other nations we talked about earlier. Well, am I off course again? I'm so distracted by the history, I'm not paying attention to the navigation. I am way off course. How did this happen?
Gotta keep on that aerospace precision.
I thought I did. Oh, my autopilot. I did not. Alright, let me get back on course. Alright, let me figure this out. We'll go to Peter's POV for a while. So yeah, everyone who's following me, including Tangy Whiskey, you should know better.
Yeah, I'm a wingman, I'm not doing the navigation.
Alright, I'm on an intercept line back onto our desired heading. Yeah, squadron leader, off course, everyone else following. You're all a bunch of lemmings.
Well, yes, you are the primary command.
Spoken like a true leader.
That's the whole point of the chain of command, right? Being led.
All I know is Peter and I are officially going to go by Ham and Jam from now on.
All right, let me get back on course here. And then there's Tangy Whiskey flying in formation. I believe that's my aircraft ahead of you.
Yeah, I'm right with you. We're going to talk about your dramatic power changes.
Well, yeah, I have to descend. I also was not paying attention to my altitude. I climbed to 7,000 feet, which I had not intended to do.
Fun fact on this plane, if you want to know about altitude stuff, it has a low stage blower and a high stage blower, which you can find down near the throttle quadrant. There are little yellow handles. And those actually engage different, essentially turbos on the engine, so you can keep high manifold pressure at high altitude and actually get better performance. But below 10,000 feet, you really don't want to use the high blower when it doesn't give you enough performance advantage over the fuel saving or the fuel cost it has. But above 10,000 feet, it's a really helpful little tool that they use for keeping up, getting over high mountains and making their drops.
So I want to talk a little bit again about the glider assault on Pegasus Bridge. Just because I am a glider pilot, and this absolutely blows my mind what the pilots in real life were able to accomplish overnight on the night of June 5th to June 6th, 1944. So being towed by a C-47, their Horsa glider carrying something like, I think, roughly 20 airborne troopers in the back. They had to land in Normandy in the dark at night in a small field, unlit, and they landed within 50 feet of their objective. And the troops in the back then got out, and they were able to capture both of those bridges in less than 5 minutes. That blows my mind. That's incredible how they were able to do that. I would not want to fly a glider at night and land in an unlit field in hostile territory. It's absolutely amazing and incredible what they were able to do. And Air Marshal Sir Trafford Leigh-Mallory of the Royal Air Force, who is the overall commander of all Allied air forces in Operation Overlord, he later described the feat of the glider pilots landing at Pegasus Bridge. He called that the greatest single act of aviation in the entire war.
I can imagine.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to level off here at roughly 2,000 feet, and then we'll hopefully get back on course pretty soon. So English said they did the same in the Netherlands in Operation Market Garden with gliders. Yeah, interesting enough, though, they didn't. It's one of the great what-ifs of World War II history, for any of you military history buffs out there. They did use gliders and paratroopers in Operation Market Garden, which was in the fall of 1944. It was an Allied attempt to do a massive airborne operation to capture bridges across the Rhine River into Germany, and it was a failure. The Allies lost that battle, and they did not achieve their objectives, and they had to retreat. Very famously in the movie A Bridge Too Far, if you've seen that, it was depicted in that. But for reasons that are unclear, they didn't do what they did on D-Day. They didn't send glider infantry to attack the bridges basically by a surprise attack, and within like the first 5 minutes of the landing, capture those bridges and keep them intact. And someone may know, but I'm actually not sure why they decided not to do that, because it had worked so well on D-Day. And then, of course, Market Garden, as Mr. Wowdy says in the chat, it was a failure. Yeah, that's largely one of the reasons why is the Allied troops weren't able to capture and hold the bridges in the Netherlands, which they needed to. And then the defending German forces were able to bring up armor and other reinforcements and repulse the Allied airborne forces. But yeah, maybe someone in the chat, you may know more about this than I do, but why didn't, in Market Garden, why didn't they attempt to do the same thing with the surprise glider attack like they did at Pegasus Bridge? Speedy says, a friend of the family uncle was parachuted in to take Pegasus Bridge on D-Day. Wow. So yeah, so the actual bridge assault teams were brought in by glider, and the reason why is they needed to have the utmost surprise. And so obviously they can bring a glider down and land it a lot quicker than parachute infantry. So the initial assault teams who captured the bridges were brought in by glider, being towed by C-47s. And then their initial reinforcements were from the 6th British Airborne. They were dropped in by paratroops. So additional backup came in from parachute. And then they were fully relieved the next day when British Commonwealth forces from Sword Beach were able to get off the beach, make their way inland, and relieve the airborne forces at Pegasus Bridge. Tuscan says Jimmy Doohan, who played Scotty in Star Trek, was at D-Day. That's true. He actually was wounded at D-Day. I believe he lost a finger or two in a battlefield injury. Someone can confirm that in the chat. All right, I'm almost back on course. So I'm going to re-enable my scary Gyropilot now.
I'm like ducking, even though
Yeah.
instinctive.
All right. So again, I'm flying hands off. I'm letting the Gyropilot do the thing. I've set it to a 30-degree right bank with a desired heading of 177 degrees. So hopefully, if all works well here, I'm passing through 137 now, 138. Once this gets to 177, it should level my wings and then hold me on that course. So hopefully this will work properly. We'll see here in a second. Tuscan says Scotty lost a finger that he tried to hide it on camera. You can hear from Star Trek. And yeah, look at this. Just as predicted, my C-47 did in fact level out, and it is now holding the correct desired heading. All right. Well, hopefully now we stay on track then, as we finish our flight over southern England and then across the English Channel towards France. All right, I'm exactly on 177 degrees. Perfect.
I'm still on 192 because I had quite a big cross-track error.
I see you got jam in the Red Sea.
Yep. He helps.
Oh yes, Tangy Whiskey, you were showing this earlier. We had a question in the forums yesterday. Someone was asking if they could disable the co-pilot in the C-47. Yeah. And so you were showing us earlier how you can enable or disable the co-pilot or turn his oxygen mask on or off.
Yeah, so fun enough, you can, right over here where the oxygen system is, you can flick him on or off there, and if he is on, you can turn his oxygen mask on by turning the oxygen toggle on.
Yeah, so there's the remove co-pilot button, and then, yeah, you can put his mask on. Look at that.
Good. following up. Catching up.
There we go. You take some nice breaths of pure oxygen.
All right, so next, our next waypoint after Pegasus Bridge will be Sword Beach, which, like I said, was one of the British Commonwealth invasion beaches on the eastmost flank of the Normandy invasion area. It was, again, as all the invasion beaches were, they were all captured successfully, although Omaha, they weren't sure. We'll talk about Omaha Beach in detail later. General Eisenhower, the overall commander of the operation, late into the day was not sure if Omaha would be successfully captured or not. But the other invasion beaches were generally captured in relative quick order. And then forces then got off the beach, started moving inland. The day one objectives for all the Allied forces, in hindsight, were hopelessly optimistic. For example, the French town of Caen, which is inland from Normandy, somewhat close to Pegasus Bridge, actually. That entire town was supposed to be captured and liberated on D-Day, on June 6th. In reality, it wasn't until August or late July of 1944 that mostly Canadian forces with some British and other Allied forces as well were able to capture and secure the town of Caen. So over a month, basically, after D-Day or more did it take. And that was, again, that's just supposed to be a day one objective. So in hindsight, a lot of the day one objectives were really, really optimistic. None of them, no day one objectives were fully achieved. Although the entire operation was deemed, of course, a success, and this was again began the liberation of Western Europe from the grips of fascism. So yeah, so Sword Beach was the easternmost of the 5 invasion beaches. Next up was Juno Beach, which was largely the Canadian beach. And I was very fortunate. I was on Juno Beach 20 years ago this week, June 6, 2004, for the 60th anniversary of D-Day. I was there. I was in Normandy. I was on Juno Beach. And I'm going to show you guys something. Got it right here. I don't know if this will show up very well on camera.
Sent.
It is. There's an engravement here. I don't know if you can...
No, not really.
You probably can't read the engravement just because of the light. But at the top of this thing, it says Juno Beach right here. It says Juno Beach, June 6th, 2004. So this is sand that I collected from Juno Beach when I was there for the 60th anniversary of D-Day 20 years ago. It is not my ant farm. No. Oh, I appear to be off course again.
How?
I'm not sure.
I don't know how quick that gyro drifts, but yeah, it's worth checking.
It does drift a bit, but it's not uncontrollable.
Alright, I'm just gonna steer back on course. I've got a Spitfire escort now on my wingtip.
Oh, he's been holding tight too.
Yeah.
I don't know if the C-47s called their escorts after the bombers used to call their B-51 escorts little buddies.
Yeah. Well, look at this. We've got Ederin, of course, flying the Halo Pelican, but almost everyone else around me flying a Spitfire, lots of C-47s, a couple Spitfires there. We got an F-16 over there. We got a F-18 Super Hornet behind me as well. Really cool to see such a great turnout today. By the way, just to our right over there, a lot of you may recognize that, aviation fans. That is London Heathrow Airport. EGGL. We will not be making a landing there today.
It couldn't accommodate us.
No. Yeah, so it was definitely it was a huge highlight of my life to be able to be on Juno Beach for the 60th anniversary. And the reason I say that is a lot of the D-Day veterans now, remember, this is 80 years ago. They would have been, the youngest of them would have been teenagers. Most of them, of course, were in their 20s. So you do the math, they would be basically 95 or older at this point. And so there aren't very many of them left at all, tragically. Time comes for everyone, no escaping it. And but 20 years ago, for the 60th anniversary, there were still quite a few remaining D-Day veterans still living, and many of them were able to make the journey to France, and they were there on all 5 of the beaches. But of course, I personally was at Juno Beach, and I was able to meet and shake hands, and was able to discuss their experience with many of the D-Day veterans on Juno Beach, and that's something that was a huge, positive, great memory for me. I was so glad I was able to do that. But it's unlikely 10 years from now, for the 90th anniversary of D-Day, it's unlikely there will be any remaining surviving D-Day veterans left.
Maybe a little 100.
Yeah. But yes, at Juno Beach, 20 years ago on the 60th anniversary, there was someone saying in the chat the British paratroopers had to show their passport. Everyone had to show their passport. You have to remember, this was less than 3 years after 9/11, so the security consciousness was at a very heightened state at that time, and there were so many VIPs all over Normandy. Basically, every world leader from the Allied nations were all there. Prime Minister of Canada, of course, the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Queen, many members of the British royal family, the President of France, of course. But also, it should be noted, there was a delegation of German representatives there as well, and they were gathered there in the spirit of peace and friendship. 60 years ago, now 80 years ago today, but 60 years ago at that time, of course, they were wartime adversaries. But that is no longer the case, and we live in a much better world, and we're so grateful for the sacrifices made from that previous generation, that we can now, have much friendlier and peaceful relations, and we don't have to have massive military operations like what happened 80 years ago. But I do want to show you one thing. As part of my trip to Normandy 20 years ago, I visited a war ceremony for Canadian soldiers. These were not soldiers who were killed on D-Day. These were Canadian soldiers who died subsequent in what was known as the Normandy breakout. So like we talked about liberating the town of Caen. So it was largely the soldiers who perished in that operation. And I'm just going to bring up a few photos of that. So here we go. Here's this is what the sort of Canadian War Cemetery looked like. See all the tombstones. But I'll show you a few more. In the center of the cemetery, let me just find the right photo. Here we go. So in the center of this cemetery, there was this monument, as you can see here. And you can kind of just barely make out, there were several wreaths that were placed at the base of this monument. Again, this was the 60th anniversary of D-Day at the time, so there was a lot of people visiting this cemetery and showing their respect for the fallen soldiers. But there was one wreath in particular that caught my attention. And I'm going to show, I took a photo of it, I'm going to show it to you. Again, this is at the Canadian War Cemetery, one of them in Normandy. This was the largest wreath of them all. And I don't know if anyone can translate that, but you may notice those are the colors of the German flag. And this wreath was placed to honor the Canadian soldiers. This wreath was placed by the government of Germany. And I thought that was a really beautiful gesture.
I think it's even the army.
And as we continue on with our journey, I will show you more photos of that I took when I was in Normandy 20 years ago. You know what? I think what's happened, I think I get off course when I bring up another window and put a photograph or something on my screen. I think as long as I have flight sim in focus, the gyropilot will stay on course.
Ian says the Volkswagen Deutsche Kriegsgarde is a German organization who does keep records of fallen Germans.
Okay, well that's wonderful then that organization would pay their respects and place the largest wreath out of any of them at a Canadian war cemetery in Normandy.
I think
German war tradition, says Stuxit.
I'm at the coast.
It's not a race, Peter.
Look, guys.
Hey, you're slightly still on track the whole time, okay?
Yeah. I can't imagine the stress and excitement at the same time of those guys back then. Ugh. On track means course 177 or 176.
Correct.
And I've been on track most of the time, while CD is taking all kinds of detours because he likes to see news so much.
But all that I'm distracted by talking about World War II history, one of my favorite subjects.
I want to fly in this weekend actually with I have a bunch of steermen from World War II there. It's pretty neat. Oops. Good.
Hey Tom.
Oh, Tom is here. By the way, I don't know where we are. Is this Gatwick below me right now? I'm not sure. Can anyone identify Gatwick from the air, or is this a different airport? Stuxis says that is Gatwick. Okay. Oh, no, Englewood says it's Shoreham.
Echo Kilo.
See, what does my VFR map say? Does Echo Golf Kilo Kilo? Is that Gatwick? All right, so we've passed both Heathrow and Gatwick now.
You can find a lot of closed airfields across the just around the major cities around here because there were loads of World War II bases.
Oh, there are tons of those things there if you look at the British maps.
Yeah, and what's kind of fun, you can still land on a lot of them. They're not the best shape, but they're there.
All right, continuing then our tour of Normandy, as we go west from Juno Beach, the next major site will be Gold Beach, which was another of the British Commonwealth invasion areas. And probably the most interesting feature of Gold Beach is the Allies installed one of two, what were known as Mulberry Harbors. And these actually still exist. If you visit the Normandy beaches now, you can still see the remnants of these. Across the channel, the naval forces towed giant concrete blocks, and they built an artificial harbor on the beaches of Normandy, one at Sword Beach and one at Omaha Beach. And these were meant to be temporary breakwaters to allow heavier equipment to be delivered to the Normandy shores after the beaches had been captured. And again, so they sunk these giant concrete blocks, one on Gold Beach, one on Omaha Beach. And if you ever visit either of those two beaches, you can still see them today, which is, I think, pretty interesting. All right, continuing further west now from Gold Beach as we travel up the Normandy coast. The next beach you'll see is Omaha Beach, arguably probably the most famous of the 5 Normandy beaches. It was the most difficult for the Allies to capture. You may see this when we get there and tour it ourselves. There were high hilltops, cliffs on Omaha, and so the defending forces had the high ground. And it was very, very difficult for the American forces who landed at Omaha to capture that beach. And again, very famously depicted at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, 1998 film by Steven Spielberg. If you've ever seen it, and I'm sure most of you have seen it, that opening 15 minutes of that movie where Tom Hanks and his his fellow American soldiers capture Omaha Beach, or assist him to capture Omaha Beach. Absolutely unforgettable, that the scene. Probably one of the most famous opening scenes in all of filmmaking.
Yeah, I've only seen it like when was the movie?
1998 that came out.
1998, so yeah, more over 25 years ago. I still remember it very vividly, and I've only seen it once because it was so heartbreaking, or just so emotionally laden for me. I don't know why, but it was so. I was crying almost the whole movie when I saw that. Those guys were in so much distress and so much pain. And,
Yeah.
So
it happened. There were a lot of real World War II veterans who saw that movie and had to leave the theater because they were getting PTSD.
I can
episodes.
fully imagine that. It was so intense.
I actually talked to some veterans about that, and they said of any war movie they've ever seen, that was the one that most closely captured the reality of war. They said the only two things that not necessarily got wrong, but just because of the nature of movie making, you cannot really accurately show this. As they said, the smell.
Of course.
Yeah, you can't really pick that. You didn't have the smell of war, and then they said the smoke. They said there was smoke absolutely everywhere, and of course, you can't really show a movie where there's just smoke that's obscuring the vision. That sort of defeats the point of filmmaking. But they said, other than those two things, they said the Saving Private Ryan was the closest they've ever seen to what it was really like to be in a combat operation in World War II. Anglo says Spielberg consulted with World War II veterans and historians to ensure the film's authenticity. The equipment, uniforms, and tactics were meticulously recreated. Tangy Whiskey, is that my aircraft right in front of you?
Yeah. Gotcha.
You're almost like a glider being towed by my C-47.
Well, we got a Spitfire out to my right and a Bonanza off to the left, so I decided to take slot position here. And so yeah, in the real formation flight, they didn't have a slot. They couldn't route to free because obviously you don't want paratroopers jumping onto another airplane. So, but yeah, got a good little squad going here.
Olive in chat says Band of Brothers also shows some D-Day sequences. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. We're sort of moving our way east to west across the Normandy invasion area. So the east side was the British-Canadian area, the west side was the American area, and then the extreme west flank was where the American airborne troops, so what you would have seen in Band of Brothers, that was where they dropped. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So after Omaha, actually on the sort of the western flank of Omaha Beach, there's an area known as Pointe du Hoc. And you may have seen, if you've seen The Longest Day, the capture of Pointe du Hoc was dramatized in that. This one blows my mind, what the Allied forces did. I don't know who dreamed up this operation, but this person was an absolute madman. And I can't believe that this actually happened. This is a true story. So Pointe du Hoc was basically a little tiny tip on the western end of Omaha Beach. A sheer cliff face. Someone in chat can look up, but how high were the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc? Something like 50 feet or 100 feet, something like that. U.S. Army Rangers landed using landing craft at Pointe du Hoc. They then scaled directly up the cliff using grappling hooks, ropes, and long ladders that they borrowed from the London Fire Department. True story. That's a 100% true story. So the London Fire Department had ladders that they used to rescue people from tall buildings. They actually donated those to the U.S. Army Rangers to use on D-Day in the capture of Pointe du Hoc at the end of Omaha Beach. And they scaled, English says 100 feet high. They scaled 100-foot vertical cliffs. Well, the defenders at the top of the cliffs had the high ground and were like cutting their ropes and their grappling hooks and pushing their ladders down. And of course, shooting down at them. The U.S. Army Rangers were then sailing straight up. And the reason they had to do this was there was an artillery battery. We talked about the Merville battery earlier, which the British airborne forces captured overnight on D-Day. There was another artillery battery at Pointe du Hoc, and as Alex says, yes, it is in Call of Duty. It is depicted. If you play Call of Duty 2, it is the very first American mission in Call of Duty 2, is you play a U.S. Army Ranger who's part of the capture of Pointe du Hoc on D-Day. It blows my mind. Like, if you've ever seen it in person, how did they do that? Like, scaling straight up a 100-foot cliff using ladders, ropes, and grappling hooks.
That's amazing. Across the channel's on a really neat way too.
Yeah, I just want to point out we've just actually crossed the British coast now. We're over the English Channel, and we're now making our way, just like so many brave young men did 80 years ago. We're now making our way from England over into France. Yeah, look at that, as Peter has on his screen there.
That's crazy.
That's not the most sophisticated that is I've seen ever.
Yeah. Now imagine trying to do that while you're under fire, while people are shooting at you. And they have the high ground.
I don't want to do it if people are not shooting at me.
Yeah, exactly, right? Now, as it turns out, the capture of Pointe du Hoc, for as incredible a feat as it was, in hindsight, it was unnecessary. Unbeknownst to the Allies, the Germans had moved the heavy artillery guns that were placed at the top of Pointe du Hoc. The whole objective, the whole reason that those Rangers scaled those 150 cliffs was to take those heavy artillery guns out of commission. And then when they got there, when they went into the gun bunkers, the guns weren't even there. They had been relocated. But still, an absolutely amazing, incredible feat that they were able to do that at all. And so we'll pass over Pointe du Hoc, of course, on our tour of the Normandy beaches when we cross the English Channel. From there, we'll head to Utah Beach, which was the second of the two American beaches. Thankfully, for the American forces landing there, was not nearly as difficult to capture as Omaha Beach was. Certainly, again, there was no cakewalk. Any of these operations is going to be incredibly difficult, but none were as challenging as Omaha was, given the nature of the terrain at Omaha Beach. Then from Utah, we'll go to the village of Carentan, which was one of the objectives of the American Airborne Forces, who dropped overnight on the night of the 5th to 6th of June, 1944. Carentan was an important crossroads town, and the reason that the Allied Airborne wanted to capture Carentan was, again, to secure the flank, the western flank of the invasion beach, and to make sure that the Germans would not be able to bring up reinforcements from the west. And Carentan was an important crossroads where there were a lot of sort of highways and well-maintained infrastructure that ran through Carentan. And if you've seen Band of Brothers, episode 3 of Band of Brothers shows Dick Winters and the 101st Airborne Easy Company involved in that series. They were involved in that specific battle of Carentan. And then finally from Carentan, we'll turn to the northwest to the village of Saint-Mary-Glise in France, in Normandy. Also very famous. It was probably the very first French town that was liberated in World War II. Again, American airborne troops dropped in and around Saint-Mary-Glise, again with the objective of securing the western flank of the invasion beaches the night before the operation. And incredibly famously, very well-known story, also depicted in the movie The Longest Day. One American airborne trooper, as Ingo says in the chat, yes, one American airborne trooper, his parachute got caught on the steeple of a church in the town of Saint-Mary-Glise, and he was hanging helplessly from his parachute straps high up in the air on the top of this church. And there were, yes, his name was John Steele, that's correct. And of course there were German troops on the ground all around him. So what he did is he played dead. He couldn't think what else to do because he was a sitting duck. If anyone looked up and saw him, there was nothing he could do. So he just played dead for a few hours. Eventually, the Germans on the ground sent someone up to cut what they thought was a dead body down, and eventually they would have given what they thought this dead soldier, they would have given him a proper military burial. But it turns out he was alive. He was not actually dead. And so what they did, they then take him as a POW, a prisoner of war. But later on, the rest of the American airborne troops, as he was being marched away from the front line, he met up with some of his allies, and they were able to liberate him, and he was able to evade capture and rejoin the American airborne troops and continue fighting in Normandy. But the church bells had been ringing because there was fires burning as part of the invasion all over St. Mary Glees, and he was, yes, it was very loud, and he actually lost his hearing because he was directly next to the church bells at St. Mary Glees. And to this day, if you go to St. Mary Glees right now, there is a mannequin of an American airborne trooper hanging from the church steeple in St. Mary Glees in honor of John Steele, who very famously got caught on that steeple as part of the D-Day operation in 1944. So those will be the sites we'll tour as we make our way across the English Channel. We'll see all of those from the Maryville Battery, Pegasus Bridge, Sword Beach, Juno Beach, Gold Beach, Omaha Beach, Point du Hoc, Utah Beach, Carentan, and St. Mary Glees. And again, if you are using a C-47, we're going to do a mass parachute drop over St. Mary Glees at the end of our flight today. How do I release the parachute? We'll show you that later on. But there's a switch in the cockpit that will open the door, the rear door of your C-47, and then give the signal to the troops in the back that it's now time to begin their jump.
It's not a real switch as it was, right?
It might be. I mean, there was a red light that they would illuminate to show that they were approaching the drop zone.
And actually, on D-Day, they used what they call formation lights, which were essentially navigation lights on the wingtips and tail. And the entire operation with all the airplanes was done radio silent, so that way they couldn't be picked up by Germans. And then they turned those lights. They flew in formation, and then flew so close they turned the lights down as dim as possible, so they couldn't be seen from far away. And they flew the entire mission at night, radio silent, with hundreds of airplanes. It's just, yeah.
Chilling.
Yeah.
Well, look at this mass formation we have. We got an ornithopter here now too. We got a couple Spitfires, a lot of C-47s. Always we have over there. P-51 Mustang over there. This is another Mustang over there. This is really cool to see.
Need some flight of the Concords flying.
And then there's nothing but English Channel up ahead. Bursley says having difficulty getting the glider to take off. So you have to make sure the runway is long enough. That's a known issue that a lot of people are encountering. The tow plane needs quite a long runway to be able to get you airborne. So if you're finding the tow plane isn't taking off, try changing to a different airport with a longer runway.
Yeah, 5,000 to 6,000 foot minimum is kind of what you're looking for there.
Oh wow.
For shorter airfields, they used. You've ever seen banner towing? They would actually swoop down the glider to be set up with essentially a bungee cord tied between two poles, and the C-47s have a hook system underneath, and they would kind of like skyhook, like you see in Batman. They would fly down and scoop the planes up, and they would catch them on those lines. So that's how they actually got them back out of the fields. So when they landed in these fields, all over France, they weren't real airports. So to get them out, they had to essentially just set up two big sticks and throw that thing in the air, and then the C-47 would fly by, 10 feet off the deck and snatch them up. kind of like a carrier counter shot.
Want to see that?
I want to see. Yeah.
Go to my screen.
Is it? Can you resize it? I'm not sure if we're seeing
Yeah,
that.
you see the full photo. Yeah, it's not a photo.
Oh, you gotta be. Oh, look at this. Okay. Okay, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Now, if they still taught that in glider school, I would have my glider's license or add-on tomorrow.
Yes.
All right, so we talked about the illumination. Again, they were doing this at night in the dark. So the glider pilots, you know, the ones that landed at Pegasus Bridge, 50 feet from the bridge, they came to a full stop in an unlit field at night. Again, blows my mind. There were only very specific days that the D-Day invasion could take place. They had windows, and if they missed one window, they would have to wait like a month or more to get to the next window. And the reason being, they needed a very specific combination of naturally occurring conditions. One, on the beaches, the 5 invasion beaches, it had to be low tide at dawn. Again, makes sense, right? You got tens of thousands of troops coming ashore. You can't do that at high tide. And the tides shift from day to day. So you had to wait for a tidal cycle where it was low tide in the morning. And then in addition to that, you wanted it to be dark at night so that the airborne troops could operate without being easily seen. But they did need some light. For example, the glider pilots and the pathfinders needed to be able to land and know where they're going. So you needed a combination of a little bit of moonlight, but not too much moonlight, and low tide in the morning.
And no clouds.
And so there's only certain days where those two conditions match up. And so, for example, I think most of you may have known this. D-Day was not originally supposed to be June 6th. It was supposed to be June 5th, one day earlier. And it was delayed by one day because the weather was not good on June 5th. And so they had to cancel or at least delay the operation by 24 hours from June 5th to June 6th. And you may have seen this in Band of Brothers. One of the opening scenes of Band of Brothers, they have an officer telling the paratroopers that their jump had been scrubbed because of bad weather. That was showing that. But if they missed by too many days, they would have had to wait like something like a whole other month.
For the tide to...
Yeah, for both the tide and the moonlight to match the conditions that they required. So pretty amazing, all the different things that had to go right, and all the conditions that had to match up to make this possible.
Also worth checking, if you did not load your fuel before the flight and you were on your main tanks, you're probably about burned through those at this point. I happened to just take a look and noticed I was running on empty, so you might want to switch to the ox tanks pretty quick.
Yeah, sure.
Just a pro tip. Peter was supposed to check my fuel before takeoff, but classic.
I did refuel a bit. Let's see, where are the tanks again? Where are the tanks?
Oh, tanks. So kind of on the throttle quadrant, on the left and right side, you got this little red.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to spin that ox. You can see how much fuel is left in each tank by you got a fuel gauge in front of the co-pilot, on the lower side here, and it allows you to switch between ox, left, right. Yeah.
So I will do the left engine on left ox and the right engine on right ox, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Generally, when you switch tanks, you want to turn your high pressure fuel pump back on.
Yeah, it's fine.
But luckily, I don't think we're going to worry about that today.
The other thing we've seen if the glider won't take off is you may have a mod or an add-on that is conflicting with that. So try renaming or emptying your community folder. We have seen a few times. I don't know which mod it is specifically. It may be even be more than one, but there are certain mods that prevent the gliders from taking off properly.
Lude Chris actually put a good comment too. Generally, once you establish yourself in cruise, you would set it to auto lean. So yeah, you can set your mixtures. Now in this one, I think the mixture actually just works how it does normally. It's not like a special engine code set for auto lean, but in the real aircraft, it actually had a manifold in the engine that it wasn't quite as advanced as modern systems that are using electronic sensors, but essentially it holds either an auto rich or auto lean mixture. Usually you would go auto lean on cruises. So that does help you burn a lot less fuel.
All right, I have got the French coast in sight, visual to my 12 o'clock. Again, in the real Normandy invasion, it would have been dark. The pilots would not be able to see the French coast at this point. They were navigating by dead reckoning. They were using a stopwatch and a compass. Fly such and such a heading for such and such number of minutes and seconds. And if all goes right, you would then be exactly where you want to be. Of course, on D-Day, all did not go right, as I'm sure most of you know. The airborne troops were scattered all over Normandy, some of them miles and miles away from their drop zones and their intended mission objectives. But they adapted, they improvised, and a lot of them just formed impromptu units. They met other Allied soldiers from completely different units with completely different objectives, but they would form up together and just decide what can we do to help the war effort when we're nowhere near where we're supposed to be. And took some great improvisation skills by the Allied paratroopers who dropped into Normandy. Mentioned earlier, where we took off from in England, nearby was one of the bases where the Pathfinder troops took off from. The Pathfinders were among the very first Allies to touch French soil in Operation Overlord, and their job was to plant signal flares and radio beacons to mark the drop zones for the main airborne forces that would come about an hour later. Interestingly enough, too, on Sword Beach, which I actually have Sword Beach in sight right now, we mentioned this was primarily a British beach, but there were other Allied nations as well that took part, including the Free French under the command of General Charles de Gaulle, who later became president of France. Free French forces also participated in D-Day, and by agreement, the first troops to touch the shore of Sword Beach during the invasion were Free French forces who were returning to France to liberate their home country. And they made that agreement with their British allies that the very first troops to go ashore would be French forces. So that's a pretty historically significant gesture.
Yes.
And of course, even before the invasion, there were many French citizens who were participating in the resistance, the underground. Their job behind enemy lines were to disrupt German communications and logistics. By BBC radio, they would broadcast radio signals across the channel with code words, and resistance fighters, when they heard a specific code word that was basically just a nonsense phrase, but when they heard that, it meant something to them. That meant, it's go time, you gotta go execute your objective right now. And so a lot of them, their job was to bomb bridges or rail depots, cut supply lines, cut communication lines, and basically just disrupt the ability for the German army to bring up reinforcements or to have proper communication between Normandy and other areas. Another interesting story, one of the most famous generals from the United States in World War II was George Patton. He had fought with distinction in the African theater earlier in the war, and he was considered, at least by the German forces, the most famous and most respected of the Allied field commanders. And so the Germans assumed that leading the ground forces would be General Patton. And the Allies knew this. They knew that the Germans knew that. And so in an act of deception, the Allies created a completely fictional Allied army. You may have seen photos of
I've
this.
seen that. Yeah.
They made tanks out of inflatable rubber. So when they were from aerial reconnaissance, if the Germans sent like a Messerschmitt 109 to take photographs of the Allied staging areas in England, there would be a massive army from the air, but it was really just inflatable tanks. It was a ghost army, and it was highly publicized that General Patton was in command of this army that didn't even exist. And they sort of leaked that General Patton would be leading the main invasion at Calais, which is the closest. Dover to Calais is the closest crossing of the English Channel. And so that seemed to logically, that made the most sense, that that's where the invasion would take place. So it was a completely fictional bait that the Allies planted, that the real invasion was going to take place at Calais, and that the Normandy invasion was not, it was just a diversion. It was to distract German defenders from the real invasion that would subsequently take place at Calais. And we know from documents and radio intercepts from after the war that the German military fell for it. It was a ruse, and they fell for it completely. And for the crucial first week or so, a lot of the German military were convinced that they knew something was happening at Normandy, but they thought it was just a ruse, it was just a diversion, and they were holding back forces they could have sent to the Normandy region. They were holding them back in reserve because they thought they would be needed to repel the quote-unquote real invasion from General Patton, which was going to take place imminently at Calais.
Hey, exactly.
Oh, Alex with the memes, the internet memes, Steiner's reinforcements. Yes. We've all seen that. I'm sure most of us have seen that.
I'm now over the bridge.
Whoever's quoting Norm Macdonald, love you. I just fun seeing Spitfires in formation. This looks great.
Oh yeah, so that is Pegasus Bridge that Peter's showing us there. Now, if you go to Pegasus Bridge today, the original bridge that was captured by the British 6th Airborne on D-Day, that has been removed. It's been replaced, but they've kept the bridge intact just off to the side. There's a museum there, and you can actually walk across the original bridge that 6th Airborne troops captured on D-Day. There's now a replacement bridge that crosses the river. So again, no one is sure exactly who the very first Allied troop was to touch French soil, but we do know one thing. The paratroops, the glider-borne infantry from the British 6th Airborne, they were the first unit to go into combat together and achieve the objective on D-Day, within very shortly after midnight on the morning of June 6th. So they weren't necessarily the first troops to touch French soil, but they were definitely, and this is 100% confirmed, they were the first units to go into combat together on D-Day. They liberated the town of Benouville in France, where Pegasus Bridge is located. They liberated that town, and there was a cafe. The cafe owner was named Monsieur Gondry. He had been hiding several bottles of champagne after French fell to the Nazi forces in 1940. He had been keeping them hidden for when the inevitable liberation would happen. And when Benouville was liberated by the British 6th Airborne, he pulled those bottles of champagne out of his hidden storage, and he was sharing champagne with every Allied troop he could see. And his wife, Madame Gondry, was giving huge hugs and kisses to every Allied soldier who had liberated their town of Benouville. And still to this day, if any veteran of the British 6th Airborne ever visits Benouville, they can go to the Gondry Cafe, which is still open, still exists. It's now run by their daughter, or maybe even granddaughter now. But that cafe is still open, and any 6th Airborne veteran who goes to Benouville can dine at that cafe for free on the house.
That's awesome.
When is this 777 coming out? You'll have to ask PMDG. That's their decision. We have no idea. That's up to them.
Bro.
I believe the answer that Robert from PMDG would say was when it's ready, and it's not ready yet. All right, I'm about to cross over into the Maryville Battery area. We should see this coming up pretty soon. I don't know how much of it will be visible from the air today. There's a museum there, of course. If you go there in the present day, there is a museum documenting the feats of the British 6th Airborne, capturing the Maryville Battery. Again, this is incredible. They were expecting close to 600 paratroopers. And because so many of the drops went off course, so many of the paratroopers were scattered all over Normandy, they only had 150. So 1/4 of the strength that they were expecting. And the lieutenant colonel who was commanding those forces, he made the decision to proceed with their mission, despite not having 75% of the paratroopers they were expecting to have for the operation. And they still pulled it off. Again, absolutely incredible what these people were able to do.
Can you imagine? We've only got 25%. Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. Well, they figured they had no choice. Like, their mission was critical. There were heavy artillery cannons that would pose a threat to the invasion. They were in range to fire heavy shells at the beaches, the invasion beaches.
It is what it is.
Like, well, you know, we're down to 25% strength. But we have no choice. We have to do it anyways. Anyways, the next morning, this lieutenant colonel, he very famously said, we went in with 150 troops. By the end of the operation, we only had 75 left who were still on their feet in fighting condition. So that doesn't mean 75 were killed, although, of course, many of them were. But it does mean many of them were injured and were no longer able to continue fighting. Only 75. They basically had 50% casualties taking the Maryville Battery, which we're about to see here coming up. All right, I've got the objective in sight now. I'm going to actually disable my Sperry gyro pilots. I'm going to descend and hand fly the rest of the way. So again, if you were a British Commonwealth, British or Canadian airborne trooper on D-Day, we're very close to our drop zone right now. We've got the Maryville Battery coming up, and then just past that we have Pegasus Bridge, which was captured by glider borne infantry on D-Day. Yeah, St. Mary Glees at the very end of the flight. Hopefully we'll be able to, again, I don't know what the aerial scenery here will look like. Hopefully we'll be able to spot what be the Maryville Battery. Fortified, there's probably some trenches that might be visible from here. We're lucky to be able to spot the Maryville Battery. We'll definitely be able to see Pegasus Bridge.
Yeah, I've got real world time set right now. It's a beautiful sunset.
Yeah, Southeast Asia survey. Yeah, we're currently passing over the extreme eastern flank of the invasion area. I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, maybe someone in chat, I'm guessing this area here, this looks like a museum, there's a big parking lot there. I'm guessing this is probably the museum of the Maryville Battery. Someone in chat might be able to confirm that. That would, at least from the air, that looks like a museum, and this would be approximately where it would be. That makes sense. So remember, there were actually 2 bridges that were part of the Pegasus Bridge operation. The Caen Canal Bridge and the Orne River Bridge. We'll be able to see both of them from the air, and it was the objective of the British glider-borne infantry to capture both of those bridges intact. And as we talked about earlier, their radio code word that they would send back to Allied headquarters to indicate that they had successfully completed their objective was ham and jam. Ham for one bridge, jam for the other. If you ever played Call of Duty 1, we talked about Point du Hoc was a mission in Call of Duty 2. In Call of Duty 1, there was a recreation of the battle to capture Pegasus Bridge. Further south from here, I think it is. Let me just check my VFR map.
Is it too white?
Oh, you know what? I am way off course. My mistake, folks. I'm actually way off course. It's over there.
All right. Oh, you are way off course.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally off course. Disregard what I said earlier. We're actually not over the Merville Battery right now. I'm not nearing the town of Malaga, Spain. I'm not that far off course.
Well, I think you're a good, let's see, 20 minutes out.
No. It's just up ahead.
Wow.
That right there. That's Sword Beach. You can see the sand. That's that's Sword Beach right there. So Merville Battery should be like right here. Which number? We're coming up to number 1 if you're looking at the flight plan, which is the Merville Battery.
I'll fly back to that.
I don't know if The Longest Day is available for streaming on any service, but if you've never seen it, it's considered the kind of the definitive overview of D-Day. You know, Saving Private Ryan, of course, is a great D-Day movie, but it focuses very much on just one small unit of U.S. Army Rangers. The Longest Day, it basically gives you the big story. It depicts almost everything. It shows Merville Battery, Pegasus Bridge, all 5 invasion beaches, Point du Hoc, St. Mary Glees. Basically everywhere we're going today, all of that is shown in The Longest Day. And interestingly enough, it was a joint production between many different countries. Great Britain, the United States, and Germany, West Germany at the time. It was the Cold War, it was 1950s when they made this movie, maybe 1960s.
1962, right?
Yeah. All of these countries collaborated, and so it shows you the invasion from all perspectives. And there's a lot of behind the scenes of the German High Command as well. Again, they talked about the confusion where they thought that the real invasion was going to take place at Calais, and that the Normandy invasion was just a diversion. Oh, something else they did, and I think this is also it's shown in The Longest Day. In Calais, a bunch of bombers and C-47s dropped mannequins equipped with firecrackers by parachute. Fake parachuters. And so the mannequins would hit the ground, and then they would start shooting firecrackers off. And so it by all appearances, looked like these were paratroop infantry being deployed in Calais, and then started shooting their weapons as soon as they hit the ground.
I remember that scene. So yeah, The Longest Day is available on most premium platforms, but always for about €4.
Okay, so you need to pay to rent it. Yeah.
Amazon Prime, Google Movie, Apple TV, and it's still the same price. But yeah, you do need to rent it.
Okay, so we're flying along the coast now. Again, this is actually following the flight plan. You know, it's one of those little happy accidents. I did not do this on purpose. I'm not going to take credit for it, but it is a happy accident. Remember I mentioned earlier that the C-47s had a very specific lane they needed to fly in, specifically to avoid flying over all the Allied ships that were crossing the channel below them. They didn't want to fly directly overhead Allied shipping and then potentially have a friendly fire incident from anti-aircraft crews on the ships. So their lane actually followed very closely to what we're doing right now, flying along the coast here, coming in from the east to their drop zone. So again, I'm not going to take credit. I did not do this on purpose, but this is a happy accident that we're actually going for more historical realism here on our flight plan.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm coming up. I've got the town of Ouistreham is in sight right now. Ouistreham is the French town that is adjacent to Sword Beach.
Yeah, I'm right on your right hand. I'm at your feet.
We're not going to fly directly over Caen. I mentioned earlier that Caen was one of the day one objectives for the Commonwealth, British Commonwealth forces and Canadian forces on D-Day. That was hopelessly optimistic. Caen was not captured until over a month later. It took them that long. They were supposed to do it on day one. It took them like day 30 something. So we'll not be visiting Caen today, but it's actually, Caen is very close to Pegasus Bridge. So we'll probably be able to see Caen from the air. And when I visited Normandy 20 years ago, I actually stayed in Caen. Very beautiful French town. Wouldn't be a live stream without talking about food. Boy, did I have some delicious French cuisine when I was in Caen. And French, of course, very well known for their wine and champagne making industries. They don't make wine in Normandy. Instead, they make cider and calvados. And a very famous cocktail that I drank so many of when I was visiting Normandy was called a Kir Royale, which is a combination of champagne and creme de cassis, which is a black currant liqueur. Oh, Surly Dev, actually that's a good idea. Let's switch over to Tangy Whiskey's point of view. We have a tradition, Tangy Whiskey. Do you have the Twitch chat up on your stream?
I do.
Well, whenever we have a new co-host, it's your duty to read everyone's location. So chat, where are you tuning in from? And Tangy Whiskey, read out all their locations. Let's go.
Here we go. All right. We have to do it for like that song from Stockport, UK, Lancaster, England, Omaha Beach, Hungary. Whoa, Colorado. Those are my people. UK, Norway, Hungary, Ramstein, Richmond, Washington, Finland, Mars, I like it, Michigan, Liverpool, Stockholm, Paris, and I'm a slow reader, Gibraltar, we've got Houston, Texas, Salisbury, UK, Everett, Space, Scotland, Stuttgart, we've got Greenville, Berlin, Phoenix, and I wish I could sing, Michigan, California, Virginia, who's out, Yorkshire, Florida, Canada, wherever that's at, and Bangalore, Normandy, southwestern France, Ontario, Canada, Braunschweig. I have German ancestry. I feel like I should be better at that. Atlantic City, Dune, and Belfast, and SC, which I believe stands for South Carolina. Nice. Whew, that was stressful, not gonna lie. No, I totally lost it. Oh, Austria, we're still going?
Yep.
How many people we got here?
We got a lot.
Over 300.
We got, yeah. Gonna catch up on everybody?
I think so.
Well, I don't know where my Colorado person was at there, but I am from Colorado Springs. Amsterdam.
All right, I am successfully back on course now. I've got my bearings. Again, mad respect for the actual 19 and 20-year-old C-47 pilots who did this in 1944 at night. But I have now successfully navigated. This is the town of Ouistreham in Normandy up ahead. This is Sword Beach, which you can see here, and then the Merville Battery is going to be somewhere below, down here somewhere, and hopefully we'll be able to spot it from the air. And then Pegasus Bridge will be up in this area here. We'll see them both here in a second. There's also, if you go to see the Merville Battery, in one of these roads, a crossroads, there's a monument. It says this is the staging area where the British airborne troops were supposed to gather to begin their assault on the Merville Battery. And you can actually retrace their steps. And like I said, they were supposed to have close to 600 troops, but only 150 made it to the staging area at the time that they had to begin the operation. And if you recall from earlier in the stream, I mentioned that if they did not signal by radio that they had taken out that battery by 6 a.m., it would have been bombarded by Royal Navy ships offshore, whether there were Allied troops still there or not. Oh, there it is, right there. You can see there's like little trenches, and there's not much left of it now, but you can actually see there's like pathways and trench lines and things carved into the side there. That would be the Merville Battery right there, or what's left of it. And then here's the Orne River and the Caen Canal, and hopefully if we descend, I believe right here to my 12 o'clock, this should be Pegasus Bridge right here, and there's the other bridge. These are the two bridges that the glider-borne troops from the British 6th Airborne were responsible for capturing. See, they're pretty close together. They had three gliders dedicated to each bridge, so 6 gliders in all. And I'll show you one of the fields that they actually landed in. Again, at night, with no illumination, a very heavy glider carrying something like 20 airborne soldiers was able to put itself down in one of these tiny fields and come to a full stop and disembark the troops that were on board less than 50 feet from their objective. Absolutely incredible. This is one bridge right here. This is the Pegasus Bridge right here. There's the Gondry Cafe, which you can still go to today. And there's the authentic bridge right there. There's the museum. You can actually see there's a glider on the ground there. It's visible on my screen. So you can go to Pegasus Bridge and you can visit this museum. And the real bridge that existed in 1944 is now there in the field off to the side. And that's where the gliders landed, in that field. Absolutely amazing. All right, we're going to turn back towards the beach now. This will be Sword Beach, and we'll fly along the Normandy coast. So just out of curiosity, chat, how many of our viewers today have been to Normandy before and have visited some of these sites that we're going to see virtually today in Microsoft Flight Simulator?
We are a bit on time.
Tom has been here twice now.
I've been here once, yeah. A long time ago. More than 20 years ago.
Rogue Wolves has just got back from there today. Hey, that's cool. So you were there yesterday for the 80th anniversary. All right, so this is Sword Beach ahead of us. This is one of the British landing beaches. And on D-Day, once the troops got ashore, they had to move inland down this road. And then they made their way inland to Pegasus Bridge up there. And so troops from the beaches eventually were able to help secure and reinforce the airborne troops who had landed at Pegasus Bridge the night before. All right, as we move further west, we will see Juno Beach. Just coming up. And again, if you missed it earlier, I was very fortunate. I was on Juno Beach 20 years ago for the 60th anniversary of the D-Day invasions back in 2004. In fact, I can show you a few more of my photos. Ah, yeah, here we go. This is a good one. It's part of the ceremony at Juno Beach. We had a fly past. I was able to snap this photo. A Lancaster with 2 Spitfires in formation. 6 Merlin engines passing overhead. Did that ever have a cool sound? there's a monument on Juno Beach. Let me show it to you here. This monument, it says in French and in English, it says, "Here on the 6th of June, 1944, Europe was liberated by the heroism of the Allied forces." You can see the various nations' flags in the background. Keep that monument in mind. We make our way westbound along the Normandy coastline. Juno Beach will be the next area that we'll see.
The Spitfires are all over you. Oh. What happened?
Oh, I've got a Dark Star in sight now. That must be Hex. Who else would it be? It is indeed Hex flying the Dark Star, of course.
Oh, I lost you. Behind me now. We got a little lag going on there.
No, that was my fault. I turned my Xbox controller on. I'm gonna hope to get some drone shots here in a second. So my game went to the menu.
You want to do a little rudder wag for me so I can see if it's you? Oh, never mind. That's Busy Hamster. Okay.
Make sure I don't crash because I'm just flying with the drone right now, not my aircraft. Let me know if I'm about to stall or something. But yeah, this we're coming up on Juno Beach below us.
Serious northerly wind, I think, but I have to still quite a bit to.
Now, if you remember, I showed you a moment ago that photograph I took. Here we are in the sim. There's an add-on you can get from flightsim.to. There is that same monument, the same flags in the background.
Oh.
Visible on Juno Beach in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Here on the 6th of June, 1944, Europe was liberated by the heroism of the Allied forces. Very cool. Now, let me disable my drone cam because I'm sure I think I've automatically flown a 180 while I was droning, and now I'm going back towards Sword Beach. Let me get back on course. But I thought that was pretty cool that someone from the community has made a Juno Beach mod for Flight Sim that has that monument visible in the simulator. Well, at least I didn't crash. My plane may have done a 180 degree turn, but I'm still in the air. And so yes, this is Juno Beach.
For the turn yet.
This is Juno Beach below us now, and next we'll be coming up to Gold Beach, which, if you remember earlier, at Gold Beach we have one of the two Mulberry Harbors, the giant blocks of concrete that the naval forces dragged across the channel. They towed them and then deliberately sank them off the Normandy coast to make artificial harbors at Gold Beach and Omaha Beach. And the remains of those are still visible today if you ever go to the sites of Gold Beach and Omaha Beach. So we'll see those in a moment, I'm sure. Yes, here we go. This is Juno Beach below us, the Canadian sector on D-Day. $14,000 Canadian soldiers landed on Juno Beach on D-Day exactly. And again, I mentioned earlier that none of the forces achieved 100% of their day one objectives, but the Canadians from Juneau advanced further inland on D-Day than any other of the 5 invasion beaches. And then up ahead here we have Gold Beach, and you can actually see in your sim these sort of blocks of concrete are visible sort of, in the water there. That's the remnants, the remains of the artificial Mulberry Harbor that was created shortly after D-Day. Does anyone know what D-Day means, specifically the D? It just means day. It just means like the day of the operation is D-Day.
Delta Day, yeah.
Yeah, and so like D-Day -1 is the day before the operation, and D-Day +1 is the day after the operation, things like that. And then you also have H-hour. So H-hour on D-Day, I think, was considered 6 a.m., maybe 7 a.m. Someone in chat can confirm that. And so the airborne troops who landed, say, at midnight the night before, they would have been said to land at H-6 hour on D-Day, because they were 6 hours before the start of the invasion. So they this was a incredibly timed to the minute event involving hundreds of thousands of people. And so yeah, H-hour was I think 6 a.m. and then D-Day, of course, was the day of the operation. Yeah, here we have Gold Beach, and as I said, there you can see the remains of the artificial Mulberry Harbor, designed to create a artificial breakwater. And so before they captured Cherbourg, which will be our full stop landing today, which is the deep water ports in Normandy, but before they captured Cherbourg, they were able to use these artificial harbors at Gold and Omaha beaches to bring in more resupply from transport ships. All right, up ahead now, you can start to see Omaha Beach in the American sector, and look at the terrain. What was formerly relatively flat, easy beach, you see there on Gold Beach, now we're getting steep cliffs on the shore. As I saw someone in chat mentioned, it's over, Anakin, I have the high ground. Yeah, I'm not a military general by any means, but I know that much at least. You don't want to be assaulting uphill, ever. If you occupy the high ground, that's always the advantage. And at Omaha Beach, they were attacking uphill into steep cliffs. And as you see when we get closer, there are only a few possible exits off the beach. There were some natural choke points as well. And so for reasons of geography, Omaha Beach was the most difficult by far of the 5 invasion beaches on D-Day. That's a little bit further up ahead. And again, probably the definitive depiction of Omaha Beach on screen is the opening 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan.
Which you can actually see in Amazon Prime, I believe. No, never mind. Also rented for everywhere.
So yeah, so we're now leaving behind us, which is the British and Canadian sector, and we're now approaching what was the American sector on D-Day, with Omaha Beach being dead ahead, and then from there we'll visit Pointe du Hoc and Utah Beach. Again, Pointe du Hoc, what an amazing, incredible story. It still blows my mind. I can't make up my mind which I think is more impressive. The gliders landing at Pegasus Bridge in the dark, or the U.S. Army Rangers scaling a 100-foot sheer cliff at Pointe du Hoc with grappling hooks, ropes, and ladders. Both absolutely amazing feats. And again, being done by like 19 and 20-year-old kids. All right, so here you can see this is Omaha Beach below us now, and look closely. You can see the cliffs there. There's obviously trees growing on top of the cliffs now, but on D-Day there would be German bunkers, again very famously seen in Saving Private Ryan, defending the tops of those cliffs. And if you look really closely, you can see there's only a few areas where you can actually get off the beach. Kind of right here, there's one, and there's another one right here. So those are natural choke points, and so it was very, very difficult for the American soldiers on Omaha to secure their objectives. Of course, a lot of the landing craft were pushed off course by the tides and the winds. Affects boats as well as aircraft, of course. And as a result of that, of the 5 invasion beaches, Omaha was by far the most dangerous for the Allies coming ashore. And it was only late in the day that the Allies successfully captured the beach. And General Eisenhower, the overall commander of the operation, he thought for a long time that it looked like Omaha was going to be a failure. I've got Pointe du Hoc visible up ahead to my 12 o'clock. We'll be able to see that in a little bit better detail as we get closer. Mr. Rady says lots of soldiers die by drowning because of the amount of gear they had. Yeah, and not just the amphibious soldiers coming ashore in landing craft, a lot of the airborne soldiers as well. The German defenders anticipating paradrops, they purposely flooded a lot of the fields inland where they thought that paratroopers might jump into at night. And so a lot of the paratroopers, their parachutes deployed, they came down safely, slowly enough to survive, but they landed in a flooded field, and then they were weighed down by their gear, and they were trying to, they were caught up in their parachute wire, and they ended up drowning as soon as they hit the ground. And here's Pointe du Hoc right here. And you actually see some of the trench system is still visible in the air. And look at that 100-foot sheer cliff face with a small beach at the base. So imagine U.S. Army Rangers coming ashore here in landing craft, then using, rocket-propelled grappling hooks to shoot a grappling hook and placing a ladder, and then, scaling these cliffs. And you can see where the gun emplacements were, the battery here at Pointe du Hoc. Absolutely incredible what was accomplished there. Of course, all these places have museums and historical interpretation exhibits. So if you are into military history at all, and I'm guessing most of you who are watching today would qualify, very much worth your while to visit Normandy and visit some of these sites that we're seeing virtually from the air today. All right, up ahead, if we cross this little inlet here, Utah Beach is right here to our 12 o'clock. Quite a ways away from Omaha, actually. And then one of the first objectives of the landing forces at Utah and Omaha, once they secured a beachhead, was to then capture this peninsula, which you can see here, and then link up the two beaches. Because they were relatively far away. Wow, look at all the C-47s in formation behind me. We got some Spitfire escorts as well. Awesome. Oh, whoa! Tally-ho, bandit spotted! We have got a Messerschmitt 109.
With the Dutchman in it. Oh my god, that's worse.
Yeah. we need our Spitfires. Oh, we got another one. Nevo there as well in a 109. Oh, we got some Spitfires and some Mustangs. We need some escort here, folks.
Should become a interesting dogfight.
Yeah.
And the dreaded Bonanza.
At the time of D-Day, the Allies had secured mostly, they had full air superiority over the invasion beaches, but a few German pilots were able to get airborne, and they were able to sort of strafe the Allied troops who were landing on the beaches. This is also depicted in The Longest Day, if you've seen that. There's a scene where a German pilot flying a Focke-Wulf 190 was able to do a passing strafing run on one of the beaches. But there was very little activity from the Luftwaffe on D-Day. And yeah, here we go. My 12 o'clock low here. You can see this is Utah Beach right here. Oh, Scotty in the chat. The Longest Day is free with ads on YouTube. I'm watching it now.
Is
oh,
it?
Great. Well, there you go.
There you go.
Anyone who wants to see a lot of the sites we've seen today and see a historical depiction of some of these military operations, in fact, all of them that we've seen today, Merville Battery, Pegasus Bridge, all 5 invasion beaches, Pointe du Hoc, and then eventually we're going to see St. Mary Glees in a moment. All of these are shown in The Longest Day. And so again, free with ads on YouTube, so you can go check that out. So yes, here is Utah Beach, and we're now going to turn on a southerly heading to the town of Carentan in Normandy. And as I mentioned earlier, this was an important crossroads village that airborne soldiers from the American 82nd and 101st Divisions, it was one of their objectives were to capture and secure Carentan to prevent the Germans from using those roads to bring up reinforcements, particularly tanks that would then be able to attack the troops on the beach.
It's not on not for free.
All right, so that's visible right here, this town up ahead. This is Carentan. And again, if you've seen Band of Brothers, episode 3 of Band of Brothers depicts the American airborne troopers in the Battle of Carentan. And then from Carentan, we're going to make a turn north to St. Mary Glees, where we'll drop our paratroops if we're using the C-47. So at this point, he would probably be lighting the signal light, telling the troopers in the back to stand up, mount up, and prepare to jump.
Let's do that then.
Into the pitch black.
So to do that, go into your cockpit view. And you got this button here, the jump door switch. So first, pull that open to arm it. Now if I go to my external view, look at that. There's the door open, and we got our first paratrooper standing at the door, ready to take off. And when we give the next signal, they will actually begin jumping. So stand by for that. So here's Carentan below us. We'll now turn to St. Mary Glees, and we will drop our airborne infantry over St. Mary Glees.
So we're first turning to course.
Looks like they're around
3-0.
320, I think, roughly. Now, I don't know exactly where St. Mary Glees is. It's one of these villages below it. It's a pretty small village with a church that's visible. Very famously. It might be here.
I think it's actually the next. The one village before. So from Carmental, you have one village after that, and then another one. And then the second one is the actual St. Mary Glees.
Okay, so this one here is St. Mary Glees. We got what appears to be two racetracks. So past the racetracks, it would be this village. We think of St. Mary Glees.
You have the Turley River, so to say. Just beyond the river, you have a. You can see the racetracks. Maybe I do. I think when you see the racetrack, it's already just beyond the Mary Glees.
Oh, we've gone too far.
Yes.
Okay, so this is St. Mary Glees here below us then. This is the church, the famous church with the steeple where the paratrooper got caught on the top of that church. All right, let's circle back and let's get ready to drop our troops over St. Mary Glees. So red light's on. Troops in the back are standing up. Door is open. Execute this turn. There's St. Mary Glees below it. DFR map off.
Ready?
With you. Oh boy.
All right, we're over the drop zone.
I'm almost at the drop zone.
So notify troopers. Drop. Jump, jump, jump. There they go.
There we go.
Look at that. Oh, you can see
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
else's paratroopers dropping too.
Yep, it's working.
So we got a mass drop of paratroopers over St. Mary Glees. All right, that was really cool.
There we go. Good luck, guys.
Now you can see they're trailing. Remember, they did like a hooked up jump, so their parachute would be pulled automatically for them. They didn't have a ripcord or anything. But their trailing tails there, just like in real life, are now visible,
that's
hanging out the back of the door.
so
Right?
cool.
Yeah.
Sitting there. It's nice.
That's really cool. Talk to us. I think that's not the right spot. A little bit further north. Well, you know what? We're going for max realism here. In real life, the airborne troops are dropped all over Normandy, way off course, miles away from their designated drop zones. And if we did the same today, then it's just more realistic. The historical events. Plaid Magoose, yeah, static line jumping. That's the technical term for what we just did, where they're hooked up to a sort of like a metal bar that they can all with a hook, and then when they jump out of the plane, it automatically pulls their parachute out of their backpack for them, so they don't even need to manually pull the ripcord. They also have a reserve chute, of course, that they would have to manually pull if their main chute doesn't open.
They're doing that from super low altitude, pitch black. You don't have any control. Like modern parachutes have that nice kind of airfoil and wing shape. You kind of turn them and direct them.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
those ones
this one
had
is a-
no control. As soon as it was open, you were going wherever the wind was below and what was below you.
Plaid Magoose, do we still use static lines? We do. In fact, we talked about how on D-Day, the two American airborne divisions were the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne. Both of those divisions still exist in the U.S. Army today, and they're both still airborne divisions, but they have different areas of specialization now. The 101st is what's known as an air assault division, so they're not paratroopers. They deploy by helicopter into hot zones, and the 82nd Airborne are paratroopers. So those units that were formed leading up to World War II, over 80 years later, still exist today in active military service in the U.S. Army.
I'm gonna select for that.
Yep. I'm now making my way to Caron 10 for our final full stop landing.
Can I now close the doors again, or is that?
Oh, no, go ahead. Close the door.
Yeah, I mean, does it work?
Oh, that I don't know.
does not. No,
No, my door is still open with the static line still visible.
which is fine. Just a bit noisy.
I know the paratroopers don't reload until after you
As in real life.
command. Well, yeah. That's surprisingly. Yeah, no reload on that.
I hope someone in chat got a clip of our mass parachute drop, because that was so cool.
I didn't see any other parachute jumps. So
Oh, I saw a whole bunch.
that's
if we do
way
get a
cool.
clip of it, we'll be able to see that. All right, so we are approaching Cherbourg now. Again, this was a deep water port in Normandy, and it was one of the objectives that was captured by American forces about a month after D-Day. And this opened up a deep water port, which made resupply from across the channel a lot easier than having to use the two Mulberry temporary harbors built at Gold Beach and Omaha Beach.
Got runway 28 or 10.
I think I'll do straight in. I'll pull out to the ocean a little bit. I'll do straight into 28.
I think it's the. Oh, right here. So mixing up my heading.
Mr. Rady says I'm going to do a video with 11 C-47 wingmen with them jumping out. Oh, with the air show assistant add-on. That'd be pretty cool if air show assistant will actually animate all the other paratroopers as well. That would be awesome.
Doesn't that happen automatically?
No, I don't have air show assistant.
Oh, no, I mean just because it's multiplayer animation. Hopefully. Okay, let's see. Landing lights on. Let's see, these are my problems. The hull flaps should be on. Open again.
Actually, so if you're still on descent, you want to keep them probably closed and keep your cylinder head temps a little warmer, oil temps up, low power, but otherwise they trail most of the time.
Okay, there are no flaps, right?
There are flaps.
No, there's flaps.
There are flaps.
Yeah, there's a yellow handle behind your pilot seat, and you open that and then push it down, pull flaps from that.
Oh, what is?
There's also a gear latch lever. So there's a gear latch, essentially it's like a safety lever, kind of to the bottom right of the pilot's seat. There's a little white latch over it, so you actually release that, which then unlocks the gear. And then the red pump, or the red handle, is then your landing gear handle, setting it up or down. But it won't move, it will be locked up until you unlatch that little handle, which is just to the bottom right of your pilot's seat.
Then we should move the engine pump selector deck, of course.
Yep. We don't need
Yep.
to clarify that anymore.
Nice.
Because my flap handle doesn't do much right now.
You'll need it similar to how you know how to unlock that blue handle. You'll need to do the same thing. Where
Yeah,
you
with the yellow thing, right.
Yeah. That
There
takes
we
some
go.
fun camera work.
Yeah, I'm working.
Medic 511 says, my uncle was a captain in the 82nd Detachment A503 5th Special Forces Group Airborne in Vietnam, and his brother was in the 101st. Yeah, so again, those two units formed during World War II and have existed in the 80 years since and still exist to this day. Oh, Surly Dev with the trash talk, Peter. Says, I'm trying to stay behind Peter. He isn't making it easy.
No, that's not trash talk. That's a compliment.
Gotta dodge and weave all the flak.
Right? Doesn't want to stay put because it's probably because I'm going too fast. Flaps.
They should stay, but I can't remember if they have some kind of auto.
Do you have to do you have to pump it?
Correct. Yep. For every degree.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh.
I think the TC3 was different, where you had to you could hold it. It was a variable set pitch. Oh boy. Yeah, people are hard to stay behind.
I'm
Going idle on us, don't say anything.
I'm starting my descent now. I've got the runway in sight. I'm sort of on a we'll call this a long left base.
I'm on the short line.
Okay. Yeah, we're on your POV, Peter. So let's probably switch to mine after. Tangy Whiskey, do you happen to know offhand what is the stall speed on a
Stall speed is right around 65, 70 if I remember right. So you want to be 1.3. You want to be stalling or you want to be flying approach around 90, 95.
And what's the clean stall speed?
Clean? Probably closer to that 80 range.
Oh,
Mef, we're landing at Cherbourg in Normandy.
I think it was a pretty nice win, if I say so myself.
Alright, I'm gonna disable my player nameplates so I get a better view of where I'm going. Over my POV here, like we got a bunch of aircraft all around me still. Oh, we got a ornithopter to my 12 o'clock. Okay, better focus on the landing now. Alright, just turned final. Oh, I'm going too fast. I'm at about 110 right now. Let's pitch up to bleed off some of that airspeed. Got a bit of turbulence rocking me a bit.
Usually want to land on a wheel landing and let the tail come down in heavier airplanes. Or tricycle too.
Good work.
Did you want to land on the rear wheel?
No, not a
No, main wheel, yeah. That's what I thought.
Yes,
I was
yes,
like,
CD,
that
yes,
sounds
yes.
exact opposite of what I would have done.
We call it the accidental.
Now, I'm horrible at landing tail draggers, so I'm not expecting much of this time.
It's okay, I saw your landing yesterday. So we all know you.
I was pretty pleased with the landing.
Alright, my approach actually is pretty good. Of course, in a tail dragger, it's the touchdown that's the tricky part.
There's
Exactly
also,
90 knots, holding a good approach speed.
there's also an Alt 29er run radius. If you want a good challenge.
Oh, I'm committed now.
So last week in Seattle, oh whoa, you see it.
Oh, stall horn.
Bring the tail wheel down. I'm holding full up elevator to keep my wheel on the ground. I'll take that. That's pretty good for a tail dragger.
Pretty good. Indeed.
All right, let's see, Tangy Whiskey. Let's see your landing.
On it. Yeah, the other day, so last week, Alaska Airlines hosts a local kind of event here in Seattle where they kind of show aviation to kids called Alaska Aviation Day. And I was flying my little plane into SeaTac for that, which is super exciting. But my
You got to land at SeaTac?
Yeah, I got to land my SeaTac, so they had a sequence with a whole bunch of jets. The flip side is, speaking of tail draggers, I hadn't flown since my annual, which only got finished 2 days before, so I'd flown it for 3 months. So I was going to video my landing at SeaTac and make it look look all pretty to the GoPro, but it bounced it, so no one will ever get to see it. Just the garbage.
Oh, my drone camera is all the way back in Trail Beach. How do I make it?
Fine. Number 5.
Oh, I don't have a numpad on my keyboard. Manually go all the way through. Oh, hang on. Thank you. I think your landing was better than mine.
The drone's name is set drone target.
Oh, reset position. There's a button I can do it. But I don't need it.
Oh yeah, of course. There is.
So if you want to see another kind of little animation, you can open the pilot door. Probably kill your engines first.
I did that already.
But yeah, so right back here, there's kind of this shelving unit for the pilot seat. And at the bottom of that, you add a little click spot. And you click it, it will actually open your main door here.
All right, well, folks, welcome to Cherbourg. This is going to be the end of our D-Day 80th anniversary edition of Fly-In Friday. I hope a lot of you enjoyed that. I hope we were able to share some interesting historical facts with you. Hopefully they maybe inspired you to read some more, maybe watch some more documentaries or movies, learn more about this, and then maybe visit some of these really fantastic historical locations. There's excellent, everywhere we visited today, there's an excellent museum there, an interpretation center. So Maryville Battery, Pegasus Bridge, Sword Beach, Juno Beach, Gold Beach, Omaha Beach, Pointe du Hoc, Utah Beach, Carentan, and St. Mary Glees. All of them have fantastic places to visit and see more and learn more about Operation Overlord and the first steps that the Allied forces took in liberating Western Europe from fascism in 1944. So definitely something that you're going to want to check out if you ever have a chance to visit Normandy in person. Hope all of you enjoyed that. I hope a lot of you were able to fly the C-47 and got to take advantage of new Famous Flyer 9. Now, we didn't get to do any glider tows with the Waco CG-4 glider, but you can maybe do that on your own time. Simulate some glider-borne infantry landing in Normandy. You can do that as well. It's a bundle. You get both aircraft, the glider and the C-47, for the price of one. And again, I hope you all got to drop your paratroopers over St. Mary Glees. That, I think, was a really cool moment and a real highlight of today's stream. Now, we have a bonus stream coming up next week. We're back here, of course, for Fly-In Friday. We'll be going back to our world tour. But we had a bonus stream coming up before that on Tuesday, the 11th. We got our very good friends at Yaman, who make the Yaman Aero flight controller. We're going to be doing a demo of the Yaman Aero. Both myself and my colleague Chewy. I'm going to be flying GA. Chewy's going to be flying airliners. We're going to be doing two different flight plans, but we're both going to arrive at the same location at the same time. And in fact, SeaTac is going to be our destination. Speaking of flying into SeaTac, Tangy Whiskey. So for all of you in chat, if you want to fly along, look for more information about that on our forums. We'll have that post up later today. But we're going to have two flights, one GA, one airliner. You choose which one you prefer. Both will be flying into SeaTac, and that'll be Tuesday next week. So be sure to check that. And we're going to be joined by special guest John Ostrower, who is one of the co-founders of Yaman, but someone who's actually very well known within the aviation industry. He is a journalist, formerly worked at the Wall Street Journal, where he covered the aviation industry as a professional journalist. And now he is the founder of the Air Current, which is one of the top pay to access journalism sites for information about the entire aviation industry. So we got a very, very extremely well informed and highly knowledgeable aviation expert, someone who is a journalist who covers this for a living, and who also happens to be the co-founder of Yaman, is going to be joining us on Tuesday for that fly-in. So it should be a great opportunity to ask some questions to John about goings-on in the aviation industry. We're really looking forward, Chewy and I, to geeking out with John, talking all about the business of flight. So that's coming up on Tuesday. Fly-in Friday, next Friday, same time, same place. Once again, hope everyone enjoyed today's D-Day 80th anniversary edition of Fly-in Friday as we flew across many of the key locations from Operation Overlord, which took place 80 years ago yesterday, June 6, 1944. All right. Once again, I'm going to turn it over to our panel. Thank you both for being here. Peter, any final words before we sign off?
No, it was an impressive flight, so that works. Yeah, it was an impressive flight, and next week I think we'll go back to the World Tour.
That's right, yep. And once again, if anyone who missed the introduction to Tangy Whiskey, he actually works on our team at Working Title. He's one of the aircraft testers. He himself is a licensed pilot and owns his own aircraft. So Tangy Whiskey, maybe one more time, maybe talk about your background a little bit to our viewers who missed your earlier introduction.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up, luckily, in 5th grade, finding a little book on aviation, and happened to have an airport near me back in Colorado, which is in the sim today. It's called K-Fly, the identifier, actually. And yeah, just rode my bike out there every day as a kid. So I got a load of time flying with a bunch of random pilots and random airplanes, and got a little obsessed. And then, yeah, took a little bit of a break from aviation, moved out to Seattle, and during COVID, kind of got back into it again and bought a little RV7 and flying it a ton since. So, yeah, I love that. Being part of the Microsoft team, helping test his aircraft has been just kind of like a childhood dream come true. So that's been tons of fun, and getting to learn and dig through manuals on all these historic old aircraft is always a really great time. So, yeah.
All right, well, folks, thank you all for being here. We hope everyone was entertained and informed and maybe learned something today. We're going to sign off here. We'll see you Tuesday for the special Yaman fly-in, and then Friday for Community Fly-in Friday World Tour. I believe we're up to stage 19 now. That's coming out next week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.